Here at the rear of the machine on the right hand side, we have our AC condenser located on a swinging door. So these two bolts, when you loosen those, this door swings out, makes that condenser really easy to service, wash out. Just like everything else on the machine, you know, you want to try to blow that out on a daily basis, but if you ever do need to pressure wash or service that unit, this door, you can just very easily take wrench, 2 bolts, and swing that open for easy access. To put diesel fuel in the piece of equipment, we have this cap located just right at the chassis pivot area of the machine. Again, you don't want the machine running when you're fueling it, and you certainly don't want anybody in that cab or around that wheel in this pinch point area when you are filling it up. And real simple cap on there, real easy to get a can or a hose from a transfer tank in there. On all of our engine compartment doors, we're going to have this exact same style latch, and all that is you're just pulling that latch and opening it with a handle on every compartment. Located at the rear here, we have our fuel water separator. This is the first line of defense in this engine. You want to be sure that you are properly draining the fuel out every day. That's done by just opening with the engine off, opening the nozzle at the bottom of the filter, draining your water out, closing that nozzle back up, and then locating the primer, and then just priming that, pumping that until it has a firm pressure. It doesn't need to be rock hard, it just needs a firm pressure. You can just push that in, quarter turn it to lock that. That should be done every morning. It's going to be more susceptible to water as you know, conditions change. So if you're in an environment where it's air temps are from hot to cold, or if you're operating in a cold environment, this machine is going to heat up that fuel, and this engine actually returns unused fuel back into the engine. What that does is it creates a lot of condensation, so that equates to a lot of water in this filter here. So be sure, you know, if you do see big fluctuations of temperature, be sure that you are draining that every single morning. We can see that we have a you know, AC pump and you know, our fans and belt area there. So with the engine off, you can, you know, inspect the belts, inspect that area for debris. The engine is equipped with an automatic reversing fan that's actuating fan direction every 15 minutes. So debris can build up on either side of that engine's radiator. Just be sure you are taking a second at the end of every day to, again, with the engine off, double check and be sure that no debris is lodged in there. It's also a good time to check your belts for cracks or any type of wear of that kind. The second line of defense in the fuel system is this secondary fuel filter. What that is that filter is a bit tighter than this fuel water separator here. So you know, this kind of catches the larger debris in the fuel, and this will catch that finer debris. Now this is actually a filter that has a very small micron rating. It's actually picks up debris smaller than a red blood cell. So that's cleaning off just about everything out of that diesel fuel. So if you are experiencing ever you know, dirty fuel issues and you just can't seem to get that machine to run correctly, be sure that you change your secondary fuel filter as well, because there's a chance if you have a dirty transfer tank or you have dirty fuel going into the fuel tank on the machine, you're going to have some dirty secondary filters there. Located just behind that is your engine oil dipstick and engine oil fill. So we're checking that daily, pretty self-explanatory there. And located just below that is the module that actually actuates that fan moving back and forth. So if you're ever asked by any service professionals or you're doing a bit of self-diagnosis, the manifold block that controls that engine fan is located just below that filter in your engine dipstick. As you're walking around the machine every morning, inspecting it before you get out on the job site, just be sure you're checking these clamps around any air handling pipe. You want to be sure that those are tight. There's little springs on those clamps. You want to be sure that those are completely collapsed. If you see any gap in between those spring coils, you want to be sure to grab a wrench, tighten them up so that there is absolutely no way that that band can be moved or shuffled in any way. Earlier we spoke about the grease zerks for the rear of the steering cylinder. Now those are located just underneath this hose. There's 4 grease zerks. 2 of them are for the steering cylinder and the other 2 are for the axle trunnion. So this rear axle actually oscillates. The front axle is fixed. And so there's 2 grease points underneath the machine, so you don't have to crawl under there to grease the machine. We brought those remote grease points up to the top here, so you have nice, easy access to these 4 grease zerks here. Now on the right side, you can see that we have 2 return filters on our hydraulic reservoir that's located behind the cab. You know, we briefly touched on the other side. This particular return filter is the exact same operation for each end of them. It also has the hydraulic restriction gauge located on the side of it. And you know, we touched on that before, but just to refresh our memory, that is almost a go or no-go gauge. It's red, it's green or it's red. And we want to check that with our hydraulic oil at operating temperature, you know, roughly 80, 90 degrees and above. And with the engine running. And what that's going to do, if that needle's in the green, you're good to go. If it's in the red, that means that that filter has started to be plugged up with some contaminants, and that happens over time. You know, that's why we have maintenance intervals and we do hydraulic oil changes and filter changes, is because, I mean, it's just naturally going to start to get debris in it. So if you ever do notice that that filter housing is in the red, just be sure to you know, get that filter changed out as quickly as possible, and that's easily done. And I would almost bet that if one filter needs to be changed, so does the other. So just replace them in a set. Located just above our coolant reservoir is our air cleaners. Now, you know, I will touch base on the location of it, but we have a nice 10-step process inside of our service manual on how to change those air filters. So just refer to your owner's manual on that. On the right side, at the very bottom of our hydraulic reservoir, we have our main feed line down to our pumps. That particular line does have a ball valve on it. So if you ever have a hydraulic leak or you know, a leaking line or something like that that's below this reservoir, be sure to go ahead and close that ball valve. That's gonna, just in case you have to take that line off or it's leaking bad enough to where it's you know, a steady drip from wherever it might be coming from, close that ball valve so you don't waste a bunch of money in hydraulic oil and have to clean up all that soil that absorbs that hydraulic oil. Now on the right side of our machine, we have our cab pressurization unit, you know, and when Mark was touching on that, he was referencing the filter that's inside of it. Now, with all of our filters, that's just being sure that we have nice clean air flowing into whatever component it is. The same goes for that cab pressurization. We want to be sure, you know, that's essentially on 24/7. So that's going to be taking air from the outside and putting it into the cab through the filter. The filter is really easy to change. You just undo this cover, and just like our engine air filter, it's just a cap that you take off and service that filter. So if you do notice that you have some you know, dust getting into the cab, be sure that you are checking that air filter inside of that cab pressurization unit. On the right-hand side of the LineBacker, we do, as a standard option, mount 2 20-pound fire extinguishers to the machine. The cover for this does have a locking tab, so if you do want to lock those overnight, you can do so. Just be sure, it's always good practice to undo those locks and take them off during the day. If something were to happen, you know, obviously you don't want to be running around looking for keys to get out the only thing that's going to stop, you know, stop fire. So just be sure, if you are locking this, be sure that you take that lock off every morning before you go and operate the piece of equipment. On the right-hand side of our chassis articulation area, we have our articulation lock bar. And that is pinned in place while in operation, but it will swing over to this flange when we are trailering the machine. You want to, you know, get the machine on the trailer, get that articulation lock bar in, and then safely tie down the machine. The reason that we use those articulation lock bars is that if you're hauling it a long distance, it has a tendency to work a chain loose if that lock bar isn't in there. That's for every single articulation machine there is. Once you are, you know, pulling off of the trailer, just be sure that after you undo your straps, that you take that articulation lock bar and swing it back into its operating position and safely pinned out of the way so your steering isn't affected.